Shaken and quaking. For those not aware, there was an earthquake about an hour ago. Well, that means nothing to you guys. About 2 o'clock or so in Virginia. It was a 5.9. And what was very strange is that at the time Mallory was at work, I'm sitting here in my chair, everything starts rattling, and I don't think about it at all. Like, not at all. Stuff's rattling, and I'm like, no, whatever. And I get a message, probably 30 seconds later, from Austin, who lives in Virginia, and he says, dude, did you feel the earthquake? And I just type, yeah. And I'm like, wait, that was an earthquake. And he goes, yeah, an earthquake, 5.9 earthquake just hit here in Virginia. And that's when it occurred to me that it was an earthquake. Because before, for those who watched the vlog for a while, know that when I lived at school, we lived right next to a train track. So when the train was coming by, stuff shook all the time. I was really used to that. So when I'm sitting here and everything's shaking, I was like, oh, the train's going by. Only when Austin said something was I like, I don't live next to a train anymore. That's when I realized it was an earthquake. Crazy, especially because that was in Virginia, which is several hundred miles from Columbia. But apparently it was felt throughout. And, I mean, it was big enough that I felt it. I mean, Mallory didn't feel it, but she was at school with a bunch of rowdy, loud kids, so she didn't feel it, but I did, sitting here, in the quiet at my desk. But that was crazy. I've actually never felt an earthquake before. This is my first earthquake. Pretty interesting. Did any of you guys feel it? And if so, where are you located? Apparently it was pretty widespread. You can actually type in earthquake into Google, and there's like a little seismic thing, and you go to that site, it's like some kind of national thing, and you can report it, and it'll show like the little chart of people who have reported it. And it was, obviously South Carolina is very far away from Virginia. Well, considered, for an earthquake. So I'm not real familiar with earthquakes because we don't get those. We get hurricanes, which we're going to have to deal with this weekend. What's the hurricane's name?
Irene.
Irene.
You want to see her?
Oh, is she here? She come to visit? Yeah.
8 a.m. Saturday.
8 a.m. Saturday. She's still hitting Myrtle Beach?
It looks like she's going to hit the Outer Banks now.
Okay, well, good. Well, not for the Outer Banks. Sorry, Outer Banks, but better for us. Although we don't live in Myrtle Beach, but my parents do. Rocco does. And, Rocco is of some importance still. Anyway, yeah, if you got hit by the earthquake, let me know. What did you sense? We didn't have a lot of rattling here. Like, there wasn't, things falling over. But the desks were swaying and the monitors were swaying, so that was a little different for me. Not something I'm used to. So you felt it too while you were at home?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, I was sitting at the computer desk, and all of a sudden, the desk started swaying,
Yeah.
And I opened up the blinds thinking, is it getting windy or, what I mean, or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. And it was bright out. And the thing just kept, like going back and forth, and I could feel it under my feet, like it moving, And I got up and went out to the front door thinking I would, maybe see a big truck or, something that was, that was shaking the ground.
Yeah.
And, no.
Did Rocco react to it at all?
You know what? Now that you say that, Rocco was crying.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he maybe felt that before anybody else. You know how sensitive animals are,
Yeah.
And he just was like, wow, what? I said, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I picked him up. I said, what? You want me to hold you? And he wanted me to pick him up, but he wasn't. In other words, when they picked him up, he just kept looking at me, and it was almost like he wanted down, but yet he wanted held too.
Yeah.
He was I guess insecure or whatever.
Huh.
And yeah, now that you mention it, yeah, he was crying, and I kept saying, what's wrong? Is it your food? What is it you're fussing about here? And I bet anything that's it, because they can sense or feel things, that we don't,
Yeah. Huh.
Anyway, how's your day?
Shaky.
Okay. Shaky, okay.
Anyway, that's going to be it for today. Talk about your earthquake adventures. I mean, whether you endured this one, I guess endure isn't a good word because some stuff just shook, but whether you went through this one or if you went through other earthquakes. This was my first earthquake, so it was kind of a big deal for me after I realized it was an earthquake. But talk about earthquakes. It's going to be the subject for today. Let's meet back tomorrow, shall we, when we will finally get the frame up, because I will finally tally your votes. Yes, I am that far behind.